اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. So for these past 3-4 weeks we have been talking about the life of Abbad Bin-Bishr Radiallahu Anhu. And for those of us who have been attending these sessions, we understand what a great Sahabi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had and what great qualities Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with. This next incident or story that we're going to share with you deals with a very special quality that Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu ta'ala anhu was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we don't have today. Especially in these times, this is one quality country that is dominated by non-Muslims, dominated by a secular society that's pushing towards a non-religious lifestyle, towards kufr, towards defiance toward Allah, rebelliousness towards the deen of Allah, assimilation to the ways of shaitan. This one quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed Abbad bin Bishr and all the Sahaba, but this specific story kind of illustrates it in a much clear way how much Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu anhu had this. And that is the quality of being defiant. Defiance means that a person does not like the ways of others. He defies it at all costs and wants to hold on to doing things his own way. In the case of the Sahaba, it was all about doing the things the way Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted. And if Abbad bin Bishr or the other Sahaba Ridwanullahi majma'in saw people doing things a way different from Allah and His Rasul, they were disgusted by it. They saw it to be despicable. They want to turn their backs on it. We want nothing to do with these people, and nothing to do with people have anything to do with them either. That's how much they hated and how defiant they were in favor of doing everything according to the way of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not following the norms, the customs, the traditions, the ways of the people of their time, or the dominant tradition or culture of that time. Right? Doing everything different. So this was one of the first things that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instilled in the Sahaba. We have to establish our own identity. Because they lived in Makkah Mukarramah, where there was a very small group. And if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't establish an identity for the Muslims, then it would be very, very quickly the Sahaba Ridwanullahi majma'in would lose themselves in the dominant culture. And so small things Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam focused on changing them in order to establish an identity for the Sahaba, and to deliver that message to the Sahaba that we have to look at every single thing that they do and make sure that we do it the opposite way or a different way. So he saw that the Arabs like to keep very long mustaches. So Rasulullah specifically gave the order, make sure that your mustaches are cut short and your beard is long. So there's that distinction. They used to comb their hair back without any parting in the middle. Rasulullah said, make a parting in the middle. Small things. Every single thing Rasulullah noticed, and he would tell the Sahaba, don't do it like this, do it like this. Because this is how the Yahud and Nasara do it, we will not do it like that. This is how the Mushrikeen do it, we will not do it like that. So, let us begin with the story so we understand what defiance is all about. Anas radiallahu anhu narrates that during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina Munawwara, there was a large community, as we know, of the Yahud. Large community of the Yahud. And it was a part of their tradition that when any one of the women would be on their menstrual cycle, they would not allow them to sit on the same place where they sat. They could not eat with them. They could not drink with them. In fact, they would not even allow them in their own house with them until the cycle was not over. Then they could come back into the house. They became like outcasts in a way. Something that was defiled, dirty, filthy. The person itself, the woman herself was defiled. Keep away from her. Almost treated like an animal in a zoo. So those women had to leave the house and go to another place until their cycle was over, then they came back home. This may go on for 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, whatever it was for each and every woman. So now, the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in came and asked Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that this is how the Yahud are treating their women in this matter. What is our way of dealing with this issue? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded with a revelation. He says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ. They ask you about the menstrual cycle. قُلْ هُوَ أَذَنٌ. Tell them that in itself it is defiled. Right? It's an impurity. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the revelation of this ayah, told them that you can eat with your wives. You can eat with your daughters who have reached the age of maturity. You can drink with them. And you can stay with them in the house. وَأَن يَكُونُوا مَعَهُنَّ فِي الْبَيْتِ. There's no harm with them being with you in the house. The problem is not them. The problem is the impurity itself. That's it. وَأَن يَفْعَلُوا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And you can do everything you do with your wife or with your daughter, with other women in your home, except one thing that's not permissible, and that is having a relationship with. That's the only thing that's not permissible for you with your wife. But other than that, all the other things that you do, no harm in that. So when the Yahud heard about this ayah and this new decree of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for all the Muslims from the Ansar and Muhajirun here in Medina Munawwara, so one of the Yahud rabbis, he said, ما يريد أن يدع شيئا من أمرنا إلا خالفنا فيه. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wants to make sure that he does not leave us alone until he's established his own identity and opposes us in everything. He takes every opportunity to oppose us in every small thing. Can you imagine if there's some person who dislikes you so much that the minute they see you, they turn around and go the other way? Right? And there's some type of food that you eat, and they said, I'm not going to eat that food from now on. And you wear a certain type of clothes, they said, I'm not going to wear those clothes. You like that color, I don't like that color. Right? I like that restaurant, I don't like that restaurant. Right? That park is terrible. Right? Everything, you're just being defiant and rejecting it because of your defiance. This was out of love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this rabbi says he wants to oppose us in everything. He's so defiant that he wants to oppose us in everything. But the real reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing this was not just because of that, because this was a part establishing identity of a new nation. If you're going to become like others, then how are you going to be distinct from everyone else? Nations are known because they have their own flags. Right? What else do they have of their own? Their own soldiers, their own army, their own uniforms. What if an army soldier from here was wearing a uniform from the Italian army? And he says, it's all uniform. What difference does it make? The point is to camouflage yourself. We're camouflaging ourselves. I just have a different flag here. So what? No, it makes all the difference. So now, Abbad Bin-Bishr, he was ahead of the game when it came to this defiance. Him and Usayd bin Hudayr. We already mentioned about him that Aisha Siddiq radiallahu anha said about these two people and one other Sahabi, Sa'ad bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, These three Sahaba, all not coincidentally, but they all happen to be from the same clan, Banu Abdul Ashhal. And Aisha Radiallahu anha said that these three were the most afdal of all the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in. The greatest, the most virtuous. So Abbad bin Bishr or Sayyid bin Hudayr, after the revelation of this ayah, after this new rule that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave, they both came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they informed him of what the Yahud rabbis were saying, because Abbad bin Bishr's clan, Banu Abdul Ashar, lived very close to one of the Yahud communities. So there's many different tribes amongst them. So one of those tribes lived very close to Banu Abdul Ashar. So he heard that one of the rabbis said this, and the information kind of passed on, and he heard it as well. He came to Rasulullah with Sayyid bin Hudayr, and he tells him, you know what the rabbis are saying? Ya Rasulullah. What are they saying? This is what they're saying. And now what does Abbad bin Bishr say? He says, Ya Rasulullah. He goes one step further. أَفَلَا نَنْكِحُهُنَّ فِي الْمَحِيدِ. Should we not also have a relationship with them while they're on their cycle? He's going that far that he's even willing to say that we should even do this. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken aback, and the words used in the hadith are very interesting. فَتَمَعَّرَ وَجْهُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's face became distorted. Like he was mortified. You're saying such a thing? Astaghfirullah, that's haram. But he understood where they were coming from. But everything has its limits, right? Everything has its limits. You can't go that far. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already revealed the ayah that this is haram. And they're saying, Ya Rasulullah, let's go that way. They probably didn't hear the revelation themselves. But the fact is the ruling was there. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was mortified by this statement, but he knew where they were coming from. But because of the look on his face at that time when they said that, the Sahaba thought that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very angry with Abbad bin Bishr and Usayd bin Hudayr. Like they thought, these two are in big trouble now with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the way he looked at them, and you could see how mortified and how disgusted he was with that statement, that for sure Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is angry with them. And the Sahabi who's narrating the hadith says, حَتَّى ظَنَنَّا أَنَّهُ قَدْ غَضِبَ عَلَيْهِمَا. We thought that he was definitely very angry with them. So after they made that statement, they both stood up and they left. They left the gathering. They just came to convey that information about what that rabbi had said, and they said what they had to say, and they were left the gathering. Now, the Sahaba are worried for these two that what if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not happy with them? That's not good for their akhirah. A few minutes later, فَاسْتَقْبَلَتْ هُمَا هَدِيَّةٌ مِّن لَبَنٍ. As they were leaving the door, a man came in with a glass of milk that he was giving as a gift to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he saw that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hadn't eaten or drunk anything for many, many days. So he wanted to give something to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so he could keep his back straight. Because you would tie 2-3 stones to his stomach because he was so hungry. So as they were going out, this man was coming in and he gave this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recognized that the Sahaba thought that he was angry with them. He knew it. And he wanted to let them know that he wasn't. So what does he do? فَأَرْسَلَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فِي أَثَرِهِمَا. They had left the masjid. He sent a person after them. Go call them back. There was a gathering of Sahaba. You could give the milk to anybody here. Why specifically to those two who just left? After them saying what they had said. There was a reason. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to show the Sahaba that he's not angry with them. He understands where they're coming from. Their defiance was justified, but they just went too far. Right? So he wasn't angry with them. Which means that defiance is a very good thing. And that's the only thing, that's the only quality today that will save our ummah here in this part of the world. Because we're assimilating so much that we want to become one with everybody around us, We want to wear their clothes, we want to dress like them, we want to be like them. And now you have Muslim children who are coming back from schools, and I'm seeing this with my own eyes because we see them at the bus stops. We see them walking back and forth on the sidewalks with non-Muslim friends. And while the parents are around, we see the girl doesn't have a hijab. We see that same girl in this neighborhood who's wearing a hijab, but when she's out there, she's not wearing a hijab. We see some of those. I saw, somebody showed it to me. I don't have Instagram or any of that stuff. Somebody showed it to me. He said, this is one of the students, one of the boys that used to come to this masjid. And there was just pictures of him, and he looked gothic. He was putting makeup all over his face and looked like literally the devil. With, I don't know what he'd put, like these claws, not claws, horns, sorry, on his forehead, and very like devious and scary, frightening looking like mask that he had put on. But the mask was not like a mask that he'd put on. It was actually makeup that he'd put on. And then he had his nose pierced, like a bullhorn, right? His ears pierced from all over, like literally. And this was one of the kids that used to come to our masjid. His father is still very well respected in the Buffalo community. I'm just, telling you the importance of defiance, how it protects you, right? But it's parents' responsibility to instill these qualities in the children. If they tell them, learn English, go do this, go do that, go do whatever you want, they don't care what they do outside the house and who they're spending their time with, and don't ever warn them about what they're doing and what they're not doing, that, this is not right, you shouldn't be doing this, you're hanging around with this guy, I don't like him. If the parents just give them a go-ahead to do whatever they want, sooner or later, it's going to come back in their face. Either here in this dunya or in the akhirah. May Allah protect us all. Anyhow, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent a man after them, called them back, فَسَقَاهُمَا, and then they drank the milk in front of the Sahaba, فَعَلِمَا, and then they knew, and those two knew, because they also thought, apparently, according to this hadith, that Rasulullah was not happy with them. فَعَلِمَ أَنَّهُ لَمْ يَغْضَبَ عَلِمًا. Now they also knew, and the Sahaba were in the gathering, know that Rasulullah was not unhappy with them. He was not unhappy with them. There is a expedition that Rasulullah also took part in, known as Ghazwa Dhatul Riqa'. And this Ghazwa took place in the 4th year of Hijri. Rasulullah and the Sahaba came across a group of people that were trying to attack Medina Munawwara. In order to defend against them, Rasulullah attacked them first, so it was like a preemptive attack. And in that skirmish, a woman from the tribe that was attacked died. Now Rasulullah was on his way back to Medina Munawwara. The matter had been settled. What he had come for, he had accomplished that task, that mission, and now they're on their way back. And they passed through a shi'ab. Shi'ab is like a pass that goes through a valley or through a mountain. Okay? So there was a pass, and it was very, very kind of narrow. So night came, Rasulullah camped there with the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in. But it was such a narrow pass that it was very possible that if somebody was to come from one side of the pass, he could easily shoot down, and there would be no way for a large group of people to be able to get out of there. Right? So Rasulullah wanted to put as a guard 2 Sahaba at the mouth of the pass to protect it so that nobody would be able to enter the pass. So he asked in the gathering of Sahaba in the night, in the camp, as the bonfires were on, he said, Man rajulun yakla'una laylatana hadi, who will guard us on this night? فَانْتَدَبَ رَجُلٌ مِّنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَرَجُلٌ مِّنَ الْأَنصَارِ. One man from the Ansar and one man from the Muhajirin stood up, and they said, Nahnu ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we ya Rasulullah will stand guard the whole night. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَكُونَا بِفَمِ الشِّعْبِ, go and stand by the mouth of the pass. And this was a very important task, responsibility, because if they did not fulfill that duty, what would happen is that once that pass is opened, they're open to attack. Rasulullah ﷺ and the other Sahaba who were with him. So these two Sahaba went and they stood by the mouth of the pass, and now they're thinking, we're not going to be able to spend the whole night awake. So therefore, it'd be a better idea if one of us stays awake half the night and then sleeps on the second half of the night. And then when that person wakes up, they would stay awake the second half of the night and they can sleep right now in the first half of the night. So the Ansar and the Muhajir Sahabi, who were they? It doesn't mention this riwayah. The other riwayah mentions that the Ansari Sahabi was Abbad bin Bishr and the Muhajir Sahabi was Ammar bin Yasir Radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. These two Sahaba. Abbad bin Bishr and Ammar bin Yasir Radiallahu anhuma. So now the Ansar, Abbad bin Bishr says to Ammar bin Yasir, Ayyul layl tuhibbu an akfikahu awwalahu wa akhirahu. Which night, part of the night would you like for me to be enough for you? In other words, I'll stay awake that part of the night and then you can stay awake the next part of the night. I leave it to you, you make the decision. He said, Balikfini awwalahu. Why don't you let me sleep in the first part of the night and the second part of the night I'll stay awake and you go to sleep. So, Bismillah, okay, I agree. So now, the Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu lay down his bed and he fell asleep in no time. There was a man from that tribe, that same one whose wife was killed in the skirmish between the Sahaba, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that tribe. So he was lurking in the darkness and he was following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam all that time, and now he got his chance. He saw that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is camped. It's the darkness of the night. I'm going to enter the pass. And I'm going to get to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. I'm going to strike them all out. So now he's on his way and there he sees a man standing at the pass. And this is Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu anhu. And Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu anhu is praying salah. Sahaba didn't waste time. So he's praying salah. So he's like, I'm staying awake. Instead of looking around here and there, Allahu Akbar. And he starts his tahajjud. In the first part of the night, he starts his tahajjud. So this man knows that this is a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he takes out his bow and arrow and he aims and he shoots. And it hits Abbad bin Bishr in the leg. While he's praying salah, فَنَزَعَهُ فَوَضَعَهُ. He takes it out. He pulls the arrow out of his leg. He throws it away and he continues reciting Quran, continues praying his salah. So this man's like, what is this, a statue? So he takes a second arrow out. He shoots again. And it hits the other leg. Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu anhu pulls it out and he throws it away. You know, it's not easy to take an arrow out from your body. Why? Because an arrow is not like a bullet. It's outward, right? So there's the shaft itself of the arrow, and then there's the head of the arrow. The head of the arrow is not parallel to the shaft, right? You see the head is actually sticking out. Now, so when you pull the arrow out, it rips off, the head of the arrow rips off all parts of the flesh that it is stuck and wedged into. So as he's pulling it out, imagine the amount of pain, but his level of khushu in salah is so amazing, so impressive, that he's just throwing it out like a pin got stuck in his finger or something and he's just pulling it out, or a splinter, right? So he pulls it out the second time and he continues praying his salah. This man says, it's having no effect on them. So he takes out the third arrow and he shoots him. Now it hits Abbad bin Bishr radiallahu anhu the third time, again in the leg. He realizes that this man is not stopping. If I keep on allowing him to do this, what's going to happen is I will not be able to fulfill the duty that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to me. Now it's a matter of choosing what he wants over what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him to do. He wants to continue his salah, and he was doing it all the way up to 3 arrows. But now, if he goes any further and he dies, he's not fulfilled his duty, and he's putting not his life at stake, but Ammar bin Yasir and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the Sahaba were with him. He's putting everybody's life at stake. So what does he do? He pulls that 3rd arrow out, and then he completes his salah. Raka'a wa sajada. He completes his salah. And then he goes to Ammar bin Yasir, wakes him up, and he says, Ijlis, get up. Usbittu, I've been hit. Abbad bin Bishr is bleeding profusely. Like his body is covered in blood. His legs are streaming with blood all the way down to his feet. So when Ammar bin Yasir Radiallahu sees him, he's like shocked. He says, Subhanallah, afala ayqadhtani awwala ma ramak. The first time he shot you, why didn't you wake me up? So what does Abbad bin Bishr Radiallahu say? He says, Kuntu fi suratin aqra'uha. I was praying, reciting a surah of Quran Kareem. فَلَنْ أُحِبَّ أَنْ أَقْطَعَهَا. I did not want to finish my rak'ah until I didn't complete my surah. We were talking about 2 surahs in 1 rak'ah. But we never talked about if a person doesn't finish his surah, can he finish his rak'ah? You can, but the Sahaba didn't like do things that way. When they started a surah, if they started Surah Yusuf, they're going to finish Surah Yusuf. They didn't pray sunnahs like we do. Inna atayna qul wallah. Right? Inna atayna qul wallah. And then we have the Taraweeh in the last days, which is Lila fi Quraysh. Right? When we have 1 extra day of Taraweeh because the moon wasn't sighted. No. When they started their sunnahs and they prayed their fard, it was not just a short salah. With the exception of Maghrib Salah was short. But their tahajjud, their nawafil, their sunnahs were extremely long. Because they never ever completed rak'ah without finishing a surah. So this is what he's saying. I didn't want to finish it. My rak'ah until I didn't complete my surah. Hatta unfidhaha, until I had completed it. فَلَمَّا تَابَ عَلَيَّ رَمِي. But when he kept on shooting at me, I had to do my ruku'. And then I woke you up. وَأَيْمَ اللَّهِ, I swear by Allah, لَوْلَا أَنْ أُضَيِّعَ ثَغْرًا أَمَرَنِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. If it was not for the fact that Rasulullah had given me a duty and I would not be able to fulfill that duty if I continued the way I was, لَقَطَعَ نَفْسِي قَبْلَ نَقْطَعَهَا. I would allow myself to die, but I would not complete my rak'ah until my surah was not finished. If I had to die in the process of finishing my surah, I would finish my surah. If it doesn't get fulfilled, I'm not able to complete it, but I die in the process. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, I'm okay with that. But I had to finish my surah. The only thing that stopped me from finishing my surah was the mission, the responsibility that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to me. Look at the love of our Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'een for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how they give preference to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam over themselves and their connection with the Book of Allah. What was their connection with the Book of Allah? That he's reciting Quran and he has so much khushu that he's in extreme pain, but he's not feeling that extreme pain because it's overwhelmed by the sweetness of recitation of Quran Kareem in his salah. That I'm standing in front of Allah, I'm reciting Quran to him, it made him forget all this pain. Now there is another mas'ala related to this, but maybe inshallah we'll see if we can talk about it or not. But the thing is that next week we will not have this session and we'll continue the week after, inshallah. And we'll have to continue with Abbad bin Bishr. I was thinking of completing it today, but we won't be able to complete it, so we'll complete it inshallah the week after next week. So going back to what I'd mentioned, there's a masala related to this. So there are some scholars from the Shafi'i mazhab that use this hadith as proof. Proof for what? So if you know, according to Hanafiya, when a person is bleeding while he's praying his salah, what happens to your salah? It breaks because your wudu is broken. Go and perform your wudu. According to Shafi'iyya, if you're bleeding, your wudu doesn't break. So even while you're praying salah, if you bleed, you can continue praying salah. Look, Abbad Bin-Bishr Radiallahu Anhu continued praying his salah. Which means, what does that mean? That if you bleed, it doesn't break your wudu and you can continue your salah. The Hanafiya have many answers to that, but the answer actually to this specific proof that they give from this hadith, the answer to that is also in the hadith. But we're going to talk about that inshallah 2 weeks from now. The answer of those amongst the Shafi'iyya who prove this hadith is proof that if a person is bleeding, his wudu doesn't break. Our response to that is from this hadith as well. But that response will be given 2 weeks from now. So we hope we can keep you enough suspense that you'll come inshallah 2 weeks from now. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.